Hello everyone, my name is Gavin Ashton. I'm the Global Credit and Collections Manager at Arm Limited, based in Cambridge. Been with the company for just over a year. Myself and my team are responsible for the credit and collections process as well as the billing process. So we deal with an account right from its inception to payment. Other responsibilities include master data for customers. I'm a data steward, SAP S4 implementation and the redesign of the credit process to fit in with SAP S4. And obviously dealing with the constant credit management type queries, disputes that come along with that role. Prior to Arm, I was just over 8 years at a global engineering company called Emerson Process Management. So I set up the risk function there. They did not have a centralized credit or collections process, so I was the group risk manager working to set up that process from scratch. And underneath me I had a team of 10, but the actual group was about 80 when you take into account all of the different areas of the credit and collections function. Prior to that, another large company called Cargill, I did a variety of risk and collections based roles for again just over 8 years, and I helped implement the consolidated European credit risk team. I was given a challenge to find a topic to talk about during this presentation, and I do after all work for a software company that designs a lot of high technology products. So the thing that jumped out of me was automation, and how automation could potentially be used within the credit function specifically. So when we talk about automation, we're talking about a process or procedure performed with minimal or sometimes no human input. Generally based on a loop type system, so different types of loop. A loop can be a loop that completes itself with no external intervention, or it could be a loop that at some point reaches an intervention step where somebody actually has to make a decision or make some input onto that process. So it's quite important to mention that automation isn't new. Automation, in fact, goes back hundreds of years. Back to things like water-regulated clocks that ran themselves. But industrial automation and engineering, and obviously the Industrial Revolution and the move over the last couple of hundred years to ever-increasing high technology has been responsible for significant dramatic changes. And I think we're reaching a point now around technology where automation is highly regarded and very much widespread. I think given the past situation we've been in around the world for the last 6 or 7 months, I think it's taken everyone a stock of what the situation is and how well their business functions. There are specialist companies out there that deal with automation in a variety of different ways. Actually, the owner of Arm, SoftBank in Japan, they actually coincidentally totally invested in a company called Automation Anywhere. It's a very interesting company, not one that I know an awful lot about from my position, but customers in 90 countries actually use them. Very interesting things like RPA driven analytics, so actually automating analytics, and intelligent learning, so using an AI to actually learn and transfer unstructured data. So that is a true leap in automation, where it's making inputs that a human would traditionally have done. So in terms of automation in credit, how are these two things intersected? So in my experience, the credit and collections function, it's never usually overstaffed. It's usually a small team or teams if it's split out. Usually, very busy. A lot of customers per risk analyst per collector. It's generally a function that companies will value more than others. Some will not value it as much. It's necessary, but maybe not as valued or as funded as it could be. So what this means is a collector or a risk analyst has potentially a lot of customers to deal with. And it's very difficult then to actually intervene and touch and look at all of those customers. And that's potentially where some level of automation would aid that function. So generally, from a collections point of view, most companies, I would say a couple of 100, 300 customers per collector is probably a reasonable amount. But from a credit analyst point of view, reviewing a credit limit, setting up a credit limit, monitoring that customer, it's often thousands. And it's very difficult as an individual, as a team, a small team, to review thousands and thousands of accounts on a regular basis. Things like annual reviews, things like monitoring that account, updating and approving credit limits, looking at adverse information, looking at payment performance. How are they paying you? Do you have time to see how they're paying you if you've got thousands of customers? Releasing orders, updating master data, liaising with auditors. These are all things that are key, absolutely staple areas of credit, but they're difficult to do depending on the size of your team. So one of the things that I've certainly been interested in over my career is the use of credit systems and processes and ERPs to look at how this can aid the team. So companies like BVD, they can enrich data within an ERP. They can provide a lot of opportunity around the different elements of the credit process and how those can be automated. So we're thinking, automation of billing processes, automation of credit checking, automation in your dunning and collections process, sending statements to customers, much the same as credit card statements are mostly automated. Logical decision making in terms of, creating a loop within the system that makes a decision based on the criteria that you put in, working then with the exceptions. A lot of cloud systems help this functionality, so things like CRM, Salesforce, Credit Catalyst, Oracle, SAP, just to name a few of the tools that can be enriched with external data and work in the automation arena. So what can this mean? So it can mean, from a practical point of view, helping connect your business to your customer, giving the customer a better impression of your business by providing them a better service, maybe a better gateway to liaising with you, interacting with you, streamlining your internal processes so things don't slow down, which is obviously a frustration that a lot of credit and collections teams have to deal with. Processes are slow. People think our processes are slow, potentially. Generally smoothing the business flow. Outputs closely following inputs, so getting a quick answer, getting a quick decision, or at least knowing which ones you need to focus on. Obviously minimal touch points and achieving more with less, or the people that you've got. Focus on the data that is required. It also helps very significantly with having an automated process and having an automated process. At the end of the day, I'm sure a lot of you are involved in annual audits. Presenting an automated process and proving the process works is a lot simpler than dealing with a lot of individual audit requests. So I came up with a practical example of this, which is entirely doable now. So if we can imagine dealing with a new customer potentially to your business, it is eminently possible and available now that you can provide an online access to a customer or a potential customer where that acts as your gateway. So this could mean that the customer could make an application on your website that could link in with an external data provider that enriches that application with elements of data such as the address, the postcode, the ownership, potentially all of the data points that are available online via various sources. This can then be used by your application process to move that potential customer through the different processes. So you may have a lead, so you may create a lead against that opportunity. That can have the data pushed into it. You then may want to push that to a finance department for a check. You may want to, at some point that you define, have a credit check that you can pull into that process as well. You can have a scoring methods within there for credit, for the type of opportunity, for the type of customer they are, for the location where they are. That can all be pushed into the system as well. Things like trade compliance can link in with external databases. You can screen it at the same time they're making the application near live, significantly achieving a situation where you know your customer without even touching it yourself. Obviously credit limits can be automated, maybe to an acceptable level if it's small value, but to a significant level if you have a potentially big customer. You can pull in financial data into your own scoring method, and once there is an exception, if it doesn't meet the criteria, that can be routed to a credit team, for example, a finance team, whoever needs to look at it. So, sales have identified a potential customer. Another opportunity is then they could go into their commercial system. They could find that customer in the commercial system via an external API to an external agency. Import all the master data directly into your ERP or into your online commercial system. We can give a basic indication of risk indicators. We can give a basic indication of financial indicators, the size of the business, the type of industry that it operates in. Then, as the commercial department, as the sales teams, work with that customer to move them to the stage where they want to purchase, all of the background activity can be automated or semi-automated in terms of the master data, any approval workflows that need triggering, any comprehensive credit checks or scorecards can be triggered at the point you define. And this process flow that you can see on this slide, we can go from the lead potentially right the way through the credit process to the collections process with minimal external manual input, which in a small team is significantly important. So I mentioned managing accounts is quite labour intensive from a credit and collections point of view. You have to be very well organised. You have hundreds and thousands of customers, maybe tens and 20, 30 calls to make a day, emails to deal with. So what can we do from a practical point of view in the credit and collections function? From an automation perspective, you can have a robot that monitors your overdue receivables, analyzes your overdue receivables. You can have a data set that you define. I want to be aware when something happens, when there's a deterioration, that can be automated. You can have your own rule set around it. We can have the automatic triggering of dunning letters, statements, collections levels, different times you want to communicate with that customer by email, by letter. You can tier the levels of automation up to the point where you say, okay, at this level I want manual input into that process via a workflow. We could potentially look at initiating bad debt recommendations based on external APIs, based on payment profile, based on the aging brackets. From a risk perspective, I mentioned pushing API data into your ERP on a near live basis, on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, whatever you decide, constantly scoring that customer, understanding their profile, if it's changing, if the ownership is changing. You can have a defined risk category, a limit recommendation, and rules around if a company moves between the different categories. We can have alerts based on changes in risk, in potential credit limit, in payment performance. You could potentially remove the need for annual credit reviews. You're monitoring them daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. When something changes significantly, it's going to be looked at. So that is a way potentially of reducing the need to review every customer annually, which was maybe historically the norm. Can I now focus on what I need to focus on, rather than, if nothing's changed, why do I need to see it? Some elements of robotic process automation, which I did mention previously, and these are some examples. I must apologise for keep diverting my eyes away from the camera. Unfortunately, it's rather strange giving a presentation to a phone, but hopefully it's going reasonably okay. So some elements of robotic process automation: voice recognition, artificial intelligence, machine learning, virtualization. Some of these are quite new concepts. Data entry, data storage, reporting, processes. These are things that are traditionally done a lot in a business. So what do you need to do manually? What can you do automatically using some of these elements? Very key things to consider. Data entry, an API potentially into your ERP eliminates the need for data entry is one practical example. So I mentioned a robot. What is a robot? So it's a configuration of computer software to produce a robot that emulates the actions of a human being, or a team of human beings. So if there's a rule, if there's an identifiable set of rules and activities that need to be done, it can be automated. How many times in a business have we heard, I have to populate this, I have to type this in, I have to do this, I do a lot of admin. I'm sure it's very necessary, but maybe now we're moving forward, maybe it's not. We can focus on key tasks that really require our input. So certain opportunities around collections, linking dunning strategies, linking statements, linking collections activity to your risk rating, to your payment performance, triggering actions when you want them to trigger automatically. Defining collection strategies around the automated robotic processes. Defining the rules around your credit limits up front. What are my rules? What is my risk appetite? Having that done for you automatically, and then having the ability to tweak them, and it tweaks everything rather than changing a process that an individual does. We can save data for audit online in a cloud system. We can link to other external factors, SharePoint, contract management systems, automated invoicing systems, workflows, dispute management tools. All of that can be done. And the benefits around this: elimination of errors through repetitive tasks or tasks that are not needed to be done manually, giving the customer a better experience. It looks more sophisticated. Online access to your company, quick answers, quick procedures. Turnaround time is a key one for the customer, for the sales teams. Better security, a vettable security process. That helps with compliance. It helps liberate employees to do other things that they will find more fulfilling and more valuable. And it helps us focus on the exceptions and organise complex processes in a structured way. I believe now we're going to take a pause for any questions. So hopefully this gives you an overview of automation, some ideas around what is and isn't possible. So I'll pass back for some questions, but I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.